Greetings friends and welcome to the Rock Power Ability Collection. So friends, I've been asked a few times to make various ability guides sort of related to like rock powers, and so I decided to make a video that had not just one, but actually a few of them all in one. So all you have to do is watch one video. I'm going to be adding in chapters so you can, look at whichever ones interest you, or you can watch them all. It's totally up to you, friends. But yes, it's very much inspired by like Earthbenders and those sorts of things. I have the rock launch ability. I'm going to have the rock pillar ability where it sort of sticks out of the ground. I'm going to have a rock wall that sort of protects you from attacks. And of course, I'm going to have rock armor as well, friends. So yes, I hope that you enjoy this video. It is quite a lengthy one, but you only have to watch the parts that you're interested in. Thank you so much, friends. Let's get stuck in. Oooooh. Hey friends, just something to note. With the poses over here, this microchip, it might mess with some of our animations. So if in the beginning you want to turn it off, that's cool. But if you want to keep it on, because we will actually use it a bit later, what you'll want to do is, when you do a particular animation or whatever, you'll create your little timeline, and to prevent it from messing with your animations, because normally it'll be always on, you know what I mean? What you'll do is you'll just create a keyframe, and with that keyframe, turn off poses, and then increase the length of that keyframe so that it lasts for the entire duration of your animation. So it'll be turned off, but of course only during our ability itself. So yeah, that's just a little bit of a note, friends. Now let's get stuck in. Oooooh. Okay friends, so we're going to do the rock pillar, and in this one it's going to be kind of like a rock like comes out of the ground and knocks someone back, that sort of a thing. So I'm going to go into sculpt mode. First we're going to make our actual rock pillar itself. I'm going to go hexagon for the shape. L1 and square, I'm going to increase the length of it quite a bit. So it's a nice shushwing, a nice pillar. It's going to go kind of like dish, you know what I mean? Sort of like that. Then I'm going to make it like a brown color, and that looks cool. You can also make it grey, whatever you like. Okay, cool. Now, I mean, you might want to rearrange it. I've done a little bit skew here, so you might want to go guides and just do a nice straight one there. Just like that. Get rid of that old one. Okay, sweet. Now, I'm just going to sort of put this wherever for now. I'm going to do a little animation for my guy. Our little person. I'm going to go timeline. Get ourselves a nice little timeline. To cut out all the extra business, I'm just going to go hide everything else. Put down a keyframe. It'll be our default keyframe. Add in another one. And I'm just going to do a really simple timeline where he sort of leans back. Character's going to lean back. Okay, cool. Does a sort of a back lean. Do like a washer. He'll go forward a bit, and the arm will go out. Cha-cha. And it'll be like, haha. The rock will fire out. Cha-ching. And you can adjust it as you desire. So what you might want to do is have like a bit of a slow build up. So it's a slow build up into this position, then like a cha, you know what I mean? Quite a short. This is kind of like the firing keyframe. You might think of it as that. So it goes like ha cha, and then you might want to increase the length of this keyframe so it lasts for a little while. Make a copy of the default keyframe, add a blend, and now here we have yeah. So that's a nice simple keyframe. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an emitter, and the emitter is going to, we're going to line it up with when he does the cha-cha, the firing off keyframe, the longer one there. If you want to be very specific about lining it up, you can press L1 and right on the D-pad and make it so that they line up perfectly. As you can see, perfectly lined up there. And what it's going to shoot out is this pillar, but not just yet, because first we're going to go to our pillar. We're going to put down a little timeline. So we now have our timeline. Now, friends, what we're going to do is we're going to go into gadgets, movers and output, and we're going to put down a mover. Now, for this mover, we're going to go L1 and square. we're going to go local space, movement strength 100, overall damping 100, and with our grid snap still on, we're going to grab the little arrow and make it point upwards. So the rock's going to be coming out of the ground. But of course, we don't want it to be coming directly up. We want it to be sort of shooting out of the ground at a bit of an angle. So we're going to grab it, once again, with our grid snap on, L2, touch the right analog stick, move it to the right, and you'll get a nice 45-degree angle. It doesn't have to be as much as that. You can turn the grid snap off and make it a bit less of an angle. Really, whatever suits you, friends. And so I'm just gonna go pin to screen so that we aren't worrying too much about crazy jumping back and forth. I'm going to reduce the size of our mover now so that it's not too big, because we only want it to be moved for a second. It goes like chua, you know, it sort of bursts out of the ground. It doesn't go like me, otherwise it's not much of an attack. So on and square on our mover, we're gonna go forward speed. Let's make it something like 7. And now when we play, cha, it sort of shoots out the ground. So that's quite a lot. Maybe we reduce the size of the mover even more. If it's getting a little bit small, go L1 and right on the D-pad. That'll zoom us in. Adjust the end. Make it a little bit smaller. Cha, and now it sort of shoots out of the ground. That's a pretty good distance. If you want to sort of judge it, you can move it under here, like this. It's still there if you just sort of go there. Now if we play, cha, we'll see that it comes out of the ground. So that's looking pretty cool. And then friends, depending if that's all you want, like you shoot the rock out of the ground and then that's cool. But if you want to do it so that once you shoot the rock out of the ground, it'll stay for a few seconds and then it'll sort of sink back into the ground. That's the vibe I go for with my sort of rock characters. What you'll do is you'll copy this mover. You'll make it a little bit longer. You'll put it near the end. And what you'll do is, where before it was a positive value, now you're going to make it a negative value. So in other words, it'll go in reverse. So if we give this a bit of a test, a bit of a demonstration, it'll go like this. Zoop, zoop. But of course, we don't want it to be moving at the same speed. So that's the reason I've made it a little bit longer. Because we're going to reduce the speed to like 0.5, like very slow. So that it will shoot out of the ground and then slowly sink back down. So if you like the look of that, then let's give it a try. We'll make it just 3 seconds. Okay, cool. So it goes cha, then it'll go after 3 seconds, and it sinks back into the old ground. So that's looking pretty cool, friends, if you ask me. Now it is time to use our emitter to shoot this little rock out, this rock pillar out. So what we're going to do is we're going to go emit speed 0. We're going to go time between emits, so we don't have to worry about that. Emit mode once. And we're going to go object to emit, grab the little dotted line and select our like rock pillar. Now we have our little gizmo here, the white bauble thingy. And what we're going to do is we're going to go R2 and we're going to move it so that it's underground in front of our character. Note that the position in which you put it in front of your character, as you move, it'll be relative to wherever your character is. So if you do it, you'll want to do it kind of just in front of your character. That sort of a thing. So it's just below the surface. Okay, sweet friends. So let's try this out. I'm going to connect it to my controller logic. I'm going to go to my controller, connect it to square, playback mode once. It might have been on sustain by default, so put it on once. Okay, cool. So now we're going to go play mode. Now if I press square, we do a nice like rock, cha, a nice sussing. It's a little bit, the animation itself is a little bit underwhelming. But if you want to make yourself a cooler animation, you can absolutely do that. You can make it, you can make it a lot cooler. But for now, I just want to show you the gist of making like a rock pillar. You can of course also make this very cool, friends, if you sort of like, you add little extra rocks on the side of him. So you might want to be like, I want to make some extra rocks, so let me straighten them up for a second there. I'm going to be like, add some little bells and whistles. Maybe a slightly different color. Go for the sort of varying color vibe here. You can go like, maybe it's not as precise, you know. It's a little bit more rough. But I think that's a pretty cool vibe, friends. And once again, you must ensure that you sort of do a bit of a rotation on it. And now let us give this one more try. It might have a bit more of a rocky vibe. So as you can see, we do like a nice rock attack. It sort of sticks out of the earth and then it sinks back in, which is pretty cool, friends. I hope you enjoyed this rock pillar part. Woohoo! Let's move on to the next one. Woo woo woo! Hey friends, so now we're going to do the rock launch ability. This is going to be kind of like Toph from Avatar, her sort of earthbending kick where she like steps on the ground and then will sort of like punch or kick a rock off into the distance. So I've already actually got a little bit of an animation. There's like a stomp and then like a punch. You can of course do a kick, whatever you like. But it's going to basically be the stomp, the rock comes into the air, and then when they punch it's going to go zoo, and it's going to fly off into the distance. So the first thing we're going to need to do is actually make ourselves a little rock, after we've done our animation of course. So I'm going to go modes, sculpt mode, and really it depends on whatever your preference is. I'm just going to go with sort of like a bit of a cube and then do a sort of a mix color here. And then I'm going to go blend amount and put it pretty high. And then I'm going to kind of just go a little bit crazy. And yeah, friends, you can kind of like adjust this as you desire, but I think I'll stick with that for now. It's pretty much just like a little square that I've, you know, blended into itself a few times. And there you have a pretty nice rock. You can also make it look a bit more rough if you go into Tools, Sculpture Detail. You see it's red at the moment, and you can press R2 on it a few times to reduce the detail, and it reduces the amount of graphic thermo that it uses, and it makes it look a little bit rougher, and so on and so forth. So that's a way to just get a nice simple rock. Okay, sweet. So now we want to figure out how to actually launch this thing into the air. So we're going to go into gadgets, we're going to go into logic and processing and get ourselves a microchip. L1 and X, we're going to snap it, surface snap it onto the rock itself. Now inside our rock we're going to put down a timeline. Now that we have our timeline, we're going to go into it and we're going to get ourselves a mover. So we're going to go into gadgets, then moves and output, and we're going to go move. It looks like the little square or the little cube with an arrow. Now we're going to reduce the size of the mover. You may want to turn your grid snap off if it's still on. And we're going to go forward speed. We're going to reduce it to something quite small, like something like maybe 1.5. Movement strength 100%, damping 100% as well. Then we're going to go to it and we're going to put our grid snap back on quickly if we turn it off. And we're going to make it so that this arrow over here, let me just move all these bits and bobs. This arrow over here is going to be pointing upwards, because this is the part where the rock sort of comes out of the ground. So if we press play, you see the rock sort of zip, it moves up a bit. We could actually make it move a little bit further, so we can increase the speed there. Zoom. So it sort of comes out of the ground. Imagine it as being under the ground at this point. And now, zoom, zoom. So it comes into position as we do the stomp, and then we're going to knock it off into the distance. Don't worry too much about the timing with the timeline at the moment. You can actually turn this off if it's getting a little bit distracting. Zip. So we wanted to do that. Alrighty. So I'm just going to make it move into this original position so it's above the ground and it's looking cool. And now what we want to do is, now that it's moved up out of the ground, we want it to shoot forward. So what we'll do is we'll copy this mover, but there's going to be a few changes. Firstly, you're going to make it move a lot faster, because it's going to be like knocked off into the distance at great speed. Then we're going to want to go local space. And the reason we go local space, friends, is because if we leave it as non-local space or sort of global space, it keeps the sort of whatever direction is relevant to the scene. It'll mean that if we're facing in this direction and we try and knock our rock off into the distance, it's going to fly this way, because it's using the X, Y, and Z axis of the whole scene and not the sort of rock itself. Whereas if we go local space, it's going to shoot off in the direction that we are currently facing. If you'd like a bit of a demonstration, I'll turn local space off. I'll make the arrow point forward. and we go like this, Sasha, so that looks pretty cool. But if I rotate our rock, it goes up, but it goes sideways. So as you can see, that's not exactly what we want. We want it to go in whatever direction it's facing, so we'll go local space. But something to note with local space is it often, for some reason, like makes the arrows a little bit, you can't like move them perfectly in a straight line with the grid snap, so you have to kind of eyeball it. What I do is I turn the grid snap off, I press R1 on something, and then I zoom out as far as I can, and then I try to align it like so. So it's a little bit of eyeballing. And not only do we do it on that axis, we also look at it over here, because as you can see, it's tilted a little bit down. So we try and make it go up a little bit. So it's fairly straight. You can't always see this when you're up close and personal, so it's sometimes best to move far away, and then you can see, get a little bit of a better idea. Okay, sweet friends. You can also give it a bit of an upward tilt if you like. It's really up to you. But that's not all, friends. Well, actually, let's just demonstrate quickly. So now it'll shoot off in the direction that it is facing, not just that direction over there. And that's because we use local space. But now, friends, we also want it to become movable. So once we shoot the rock, we want it to sort of, it's going to roll off into the distance. So we're going to put down a little keyframe. And we'll do it at the start of our second mover, which is our sort of launching mover. We're going to go to our rock, L1 and square. By default, it isn't movable, but we're going to make it movable now. So that's looking cool. So it's going to go, shashing. Something I forgot to do, friends, is you've got to go to this keyframe and make it keep changes. Let's try once again. Yeah. So there goes our rock. You can also rename this keyframe. So I'm going to make it movable, just so that we know what all of our logic is doing. Just like that. Yeah, woo, and there it goes off into the distance. Lovely stuff. Okay, sweet friends. Now, something that you might want to do to make it just a little bit of quality of life, as it were, so you don't have too many rocks cluttering up your scene, is add a destroyer after a few seconds. So we'll go into Gadgets, Moves and Output, and the destroyer, which is the little skull icon. And you can make it like after 5 seconds or something, it'll destroy itself. Because otherwise, if we had a bunch of them, they would clutter up our scene quite a bit. So I'm just going to create a bit of a wall here to demonstrate. Yeah, goosh. So it sort of chills for a second, and then it will disappear. If you want to make it a little bit more sort of consistent with your character and the sort of rocky style, what I often do in my own games is I make like earth moves like sink back into the ground. And the way that you do that is you're going to add another mover. Actually, let's copy the original one. Let's copy the original one. And it's going to move, not up, but down. So we'll go grid snap, and we'll go point downwards. You can also leave the arrow pointing up, but you can make the value negative. That'll also make you go down. So we will move it down like that. But we're going to put a little keyframe over here. You can turn off the grid snap if it's being a little bit annoying. And we're going to go collidability off. And because movable has been turned on, it was keep changes, we're going to tap it twice so it turns it off. And that is going to be keep changes as well. So now it's going to go, yeah, oof, oh, rolling around. And then it will sync. Yay! So there you go, friends. If it got deleted a little bit too quickly, we can just move the destroyer a little bit here so we are looking good. So that we can actually see it sort of sync before it disappears. So there you go. It disappears. It sort of sinks into the ground. It's just a little bit less jarring. Maybe fits in a little bit more with your particular character's sort of style and the earthy vibes, earthy rocky vibes. Okay, sweet friends. So let me now use this ability and get it to work. So I'm going to go put on this timeline, which is our sort of animation. Yeah. So we're going to make it appear when. So we're gonna go gadgets, moves and output, get ourselves an emitter, and we're going to line it up with when the stomp happens. So it's going to go cha. So when it does the stomp, then the rock is going to come out of the ground, and then it's going to be fired off. We may need to tweak the animations and the timelines around a little bit so that the timing is good, but I think that we're off to a good start at the moment. So we're going to go emit speed 0, emit mode once. Object to emit is of course our rock, but we are going to put the rock not where it is at the moment, but slightly underground and in front of our little character. And you're also going to want to put it a little bit to the right so that it lines up with the punch, because he does a punch with his right hand over here. Cha. So you want it a little bit to the right as well. Okay, sweet. Now I'm going to line this timeline up. Line this timeline. Blah, blah, blah. Bit of a tongue twister. I'm going to make it triangle. And with triangle, we will see what happens. You'll also want to make it so that, ensure that your timeline is playback mode set to once, so you don't have to hold the triangle button. So triangle, cha, cha. So as you can see, that was pretty cool. The only problem was, it was a little bit quick. So let's look again. Here, you see it sort of launches off before I do my punch, and that's totally fine, easy fix. What we'll do is we'll go show and hide, preview invisibility, turn that off, and then we will go into our timeline, and we will just add a little bit of space, move our timeline, our movable keyframe rather, so it lines up there as well. Now if we give it a bit of a try, it's going to be cha, cha. So that's a little bit better, maybe slightly longer, and now let us see once again, cha, cha. So that looks pretty cool, friends. And we can of course do it in any direction. So remember, the thing that makes the mover that makes us move upwards is using the global space, whereas the one that makes it move forwards is using local space. So there you go, friends. That's pretty much all there is to it, to make yourself a nice rock launch ability just like Toph from Avatar. You can of course make it move slightly further out of the ground. It is quite low at the minute, but those are all little tweaks that you can make as you desire. Hey friends, now it's time for the classic Earthbender rock superhero defensive technique, which is the rock wall or earth wall. I've got a little bit of a timeline here, just where the character sort of crouches down and then brings their arms up, wah, to summon their little rock wall. And you can go with different vibes here in terms of the look of the rocks. Like you can go for like a classic craggy, spiky, sort of rough looking rock. Or you can go for something like a little rock pillar, which I often like to go for. So I'm going to go hexagon when we go into sculpt mode. I'm going to choose a nice brown, mix of browns. Then I'm going to increase the length, so it's pretty long. Reduce the size a bit, so it's kind of relative to the character's size. And then I'm just going to kind of create like a line of rocks, you know, just like a bit of this. Doesn't have to be too crazy or anything. You can, you know, do with this as you desire. If you want to make it a little bit rough, go into tools, sculpt to detail, reduce that detail, give it a bit more of a rough look. That looks pretty cool. If you want to mess around with the color and that sort of thing, go to tools, spray paint, all that sort of business. Give it a bit of a soft blend. Maybe go with a sphere. If you change shapes, you might have to turn on the soft blend again. And then, you know, have a bit of a just so it looks like one piece of rock. Mess around with it. Looks pretty cool. And just like that, you have yourself a rock wall. You might want to increase the size of it as you desire. Yeah, whatever sort of vibe you're going with is cool. Okay, cool. So we're going to put a piece of logic onto our little rock wall over here. You can just put a timeline, but sometimes it's better to do a microchip in case you want to put any extra bits. Like if you want to be, you know, doing damage or adding some force appliers, anything like that. You can put those in a timeline too, but yeah, you never know. You never know. Okay, friends, so now we have our timeline inside our microchip of our little rock wall. So what we're going to do is we're going to go timeline, and we are going to go gadgets, moves and output, and then to mover, the cube with a little arrow. We're going to reduce this in size so it only lasts for like less than half a second. We're going to go movement strength 100%, damping 100%. We're going to put on our grid snap if it's not on anymore, and we're going to move this arrow over here so that it's pointing upwards, because of course we want the rocks to come out of the ground. That's looking cool. And we'll see what it looks like if the speed is 5. So that is looking pretty cool. If we move it underground, you might want to put your grid snap on quickly. Sorry friends, there's a lot going on at the minute. But we're just going to test. So it moves about 5 meters. So if we move it, if we move it like this, ching, how much does 5 meters give us? Cha-ching. So that's pretty cool. Maybe like a little bit high, so we can reduce that to maybe 4 meters. Shushing. So that looks pretty cool, friends. So we get it to move a very casual 4 meters. It's going to be moving up. Sushing, just like that. That looks pretty cool. And then, of course, friends, at the end of this journey, we're going to want to have our rock sort of sink back into the ground. So I'm going to have a mover just like that, but now instead of +4, I'm going to make it -4. If you want to make it sink back in a little bit slower, friends, then what you might want to do is make it something like -1 and make it last a little bit longer. And that way it'll sink back into the earth, but just not as quickly. So if I move this up here just to demonstrate, it'll go zhink, and then it'll go zhoo. It sort of sinks back in a little bit slowly. As you can see, his little head is still sticking out here a bit, so we might need to make that even longer. Let's try again. Zhip, zhoo. That's looking cool. And then wherever our sort of rock wall ends, and once it has disappeared again, so it's here, it's defending, I guess, us against the onslaught of enemy attacks. Pew, 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 pew. And then it goes away. Eventually it's like, cool, I've done my work, time to head out. And once it's done that, once it's disappeared, so at the end of this, what we can do is add in a little destroyer, line it up with sort of near the end there, and then it will be destroyed, so we don't have a million little rock walls, hiding underground. So remember that even if, it's not so much a thing of out of sight, out of mind in dreams, because if you have a lot of objects, it can start adding up to the old thermo, So it's a good thing to delete them if you're not going to be using them anymore. Okay, sweet. So let us now figure out, like, okay, that looks cool, but how are we going to get it to work with our character? Well, we remember our little timeline here, our little animation. We are now going to add in an emitter. We're going to go emitter, it moves an output, and we're going to line it up. You might want to turn off the old grid snap quickly. Guides and turn off the grid snap. You might want to now line the emitter up with this keyframe where we're having a fun time. It's a little bit small at the moment, so I'm going to press L1 and right on the D-pad. And now I can line them up exactly. If you want to be cool, you might actually move it slightly before, so that the rock wall starts coming up like as you are, getting into your position. As you can see, our little character here, his arms aren't quite up yet, but it's like the rock wall will start coming at this point. Okay, cool. So what are we going to emit? Well, first we're going to go 0 speed, emit mode once. Then we're going to go object to emit, and we're going to choose this guy. And luckily for us, we don't have to change the position of this or anything, because it'll be whatever the position was, so it'll work quite nicely for us. Okay, sweet friends. Now the last thing to do is to connect this to a button press. I think I'll make it R1. You can make it anything. Alrighty. Hiya. So there we have a nice little rock wall. It chills. You can jump on it. I think you can. Let me try that again. I want to see if I can jump on it. You can jump on it. You can use it as like, haha, time to get to this higher area. Oh no, it's sinking. Just like that, friends. A really easy rock wall. One thing you might want to just do with the timeline is to make it playback mode once. Okay, sweet friends. That's how you get a rock wall. Easy as. Hey friends, so now I'm going to show you how to do Earth Armor. Ooh, this is very much inspired by Avatar as well. Both Toph and Aang, when they've both done things where they've like summoned up rocks to surround them, whoosh, and then like they appear like covered in the sort of rock armor. So that's the vibe that I'm going to go for here. I've just got a little animation. It's going to be like summon rocks, and they kind of look cool. So at this stage, whoosh, that's where they like pull the rocks up. They'll encase them, and then they'll like appear looking all cool and armory and stuff. So how we're going to do this is, first step, we're going to actually go into our puppet because we want to give them some sort of rock armor. So what you'll do is you'll put on guides, you'll scope into the puppet itself, and you'll make a copy of their head and just snap it over here, bring it over here. Now what you're going to want to do is go into this head and go stamp shape, you know, sculpt mode, that sort of a thing. And what we're going to do is make like some funky armor. You're going to go guides, put a mirror snap on, just a mirror. And yeah, we're going to have a time, friends. You can, you know, make the color like one of these shifting brown colors and have a crazy time. You might want to put like a bit of a blend on. Don't worry about the blue because we'll actually delete the blue head because this one will be underneath it. So we're basically just going to be like give our character some cool like earthy vibes. As I said, don't worry about the blue just at the moment because it's going to vanish in just a second. We're basically just trying to see it so we can get a gist of like where the head will be. You can now delete the head, and we've given them like a cool head armor thing. Cha-cha-ching. You can scope into it with L1 and X while you're holding it with R2. So it's now part of the same group as the head. And now, whoops, what you'll want to do though is you'll go to this rocky helmet that you've just made, and you're going to go movable, and you're going to turn that off. So now it will be a part of their head. As you can see, they've now got this cool rock head. You can do that for every limb, friends, as you desire. Or like a little bit of a cheat that you might do is create a little bit of a, you'll turn off the grid snap, create a bit of a timeline. And when I say timeline, I actually mean keyframe. So you're going to put down a little keyframe. Sorry for all the back and forth. You're now going to go to the puppet, and you're going to select all of their body parts with X. That's right, everyone. All something of them. 20, 25. I'm not sure because there's also little internal bits as well. But we're going to select them all. Then you're going to go L1 and square. And you're going to go on their outer properties. You're going to go tint amount 100%. You're going to go on the color wheel. You're going to go a little bit over to orange and then move it a little bit over here. So it's got a bit of a brown look, as you can see. Very cool. Then you'll go to fleck properties, increase the looseness, so it's pretty high. So you see they've got like a bit of a rough texture to them now. You can increase the ruffle there. You can add a little bit of impasto, so it looks a little bit, they look a little bit chunkier. And yeah, friends, you can change the fleck perspective as well, but maybe not the fleck perspective because that just makes it really big. And there you are, friends. So we'll just name this Earth Armor. And then you can actually change the color of the keyframe as well, so that it's also like a brownish color. Orange, brown, similar vibe at this stage. Okay, sweet. So basically what's going to happen is, this is what our character's going to look like. Sweet. They're going to be like all nice and armory, and they're going to be basically just looking cool. What you'll also want to do for this Earth Armor is you'll go into the helmet. L1 and square on the helmet itself, not the whole head, but just the helmet. And you're going to go visibility off. But then you're going to go with Earth Armor, visibility on. So when this keyframe is activated, it is going to make our helmet and our cool armor appear. You see, if we go into show and hide, and we go preview invisibility, we're not going to see our little helmet. So now, how do we make this happen? Well, we're going to go to our timeline, and we're going to be like, yeah, watcha. So that looks pretty cool. We get our thing going. We're going to take our Earth Armor over here, and we're going to place it wherever. We're still going to summon the rocks. So, cha-ching. So at this stage, don't worry too much about exactly where you place it, but we're going to go keep changes. So if I play it, it's going to go, hi-ya. So there they are. They've got their cool armor. But now we want to actually have some rocks like appear and sort of encase them, you know, because I feel like that's an essential part. So we're going to go into sculpt mode. We're going to create some rocks. So I'm going to go brown, a nice brown. You can go with gray, friends, really whatever you fancy. I'm going to go I'm going to go blend them out and make it pretty high. I'm going to go, wacha-cha. I'm going to, oh, I've got a little bit of a mirror on at the moment, so you can actually turn the mirror off. I'm just going to create, you know, a bit of a rocky vibe that's going on here. You can adjust the size of it, you know what I mean? You can do whatever you fancy. I think what I'll do here is I'll just quickly turn the blend amount pretty low and then make it so that it's like a kind of, it's like it's got like a rough edge and then like a bit of a flat edge as well. So it's gonna go like, I'm gonna have like one here and one on the other side, and they're both gonna go like boom and sort of close in the middle, if you know what I mean. So I'm going to go like this. It doesn't need to be like a clean sort of cut like that. But I'm going to make one here. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to do another one on the other side. And basically these dudes are going to sort of like, you might want to sort of lower them at first, so that they, looks like they come sort of from the ground, you know what I mean? We'll do a little bit of this. I think that looks pretty cool. So it's going to come at this stage, and then it's going to essentially fly open and close them together. So we're going to select these two, and we're going to put them in a group. Now we're going to put a timeline, not in this timeline over here, but on this actual like funky rock group, the little closey rock group. So we're going to also go quickly pin to screen, because when we start moving these rocks around, the timeline's going to start jumping too. So I'm going to put down just a default keyframe in which nothing's happening. And then I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go like cha-cha-cha. And this one as well, you might need to adjust it ever so slightly. Cha-cha. It doesn't need to be like exact, friends, you know what I mean? It's just so that your character looks like they're like encased in the rock. And it doesn't have to, once again, it doesn't have to like match up perfectly, you know what I mean? It's just so that it gives that impression of they being sort of like crushed by a rock. You may need to add in an extra frame depending on how they react. Let me just increase the length of this keyframe so we can see what's going on. So let's go. So that's pretty cool. Maybe a little bit faster. So that looks pretty dope, friends. I think what'll happen is they'll be like, it'll close, and then it'll sort of like blast open again. So let me just, so it'll go like, you know what I mean? So it's like, it raises up, it encases them, and then you'll appear, and you'll be like, wah, get out of my way, rocks. You know what I mean? At which stage they can remain there, and they can maybe sink. So we'll put down a little mover. And the mover will be 100%, 100%. We can make this something pretty low, like 1 meter a second or something like that. We'll go to our grid snap, turn that on quickly, move the arrow so it's pointing down. So what'll happen is it'll close, it'll open, and it will disappear. We're also going to just quickly want to make sure that our rocks are not movable and they are non-collidable. So they're not going to, you know, smack our character around. So there we actually have it. So the timing's ever so slightly off, but that's totally fine. We can just make it so that this lasts maybe like a little bit longer. Turn off the grid snap if it's messing with you. A little bit longer. Cha-cha-cha. Cha-cha-cha. And then after a few seconds, after it's, you know, faded away sort of a thing, you might want to add in a little destroyer so that we aren't taking up too much extra thermo with that chap. And there we are, friends. That's all you need for the little closing rock logic. So we're going to go back to our original timeline, where we're going like, yeah. So that's looking pretty cool. Yeah. So it's going to be kind of just before this, when we want to summon our rocks to encase us. It's looking a little bit small at the moment, so I'm going to go L1 and right on the D-pad. And now I'm going to add in an emitter. We're going to go, yeah. It's going to encase you, and then, wow, you looking dope and covered in armor. So we're going to go emitter. What are we going to emit? It's going to be emit mode once. Speed is 0. We're going to emit this guy. So if we give it a bit of a playthrough. So that's pretty much it, friends. So now we have our super cool little Oki here, our little person. They are now encased in rock, and they are like looking super cool. Dang, that is so cool. This is actually the first time I've done it. I've pretty much just I've been making this up totally as I go along, friends, and it looks really cool. So I think let us connect this to a little button press, and I think I'll connect it to something like R2. In your timeline, you're going to go playback mode and set that to once. Ah, your boy is in town. Your boy is in town. If you don't like the look of the sort of the furry body covering, that's totally fine. What you'll do is you'll just go to every body part and you'll create like a bit of an armor thing. Or you can just create like a general piece of armor for the torso, that sort of a thing. It really depends on you, friends. It's whatever your particular preference is. But yes, friends, that's all you have to do in order to get the rock armor. Alrighty. That's looking fabulous. So now we want to figure out how do we actually make our earth armor only last a little while. So we're not going to have it lasting forever, but it'll only last like a few seconds or whatever, or you know, a minute, and then it'll turn off, deactivate, you know what I mean? As for the animations and that sort of stuff, I'll leave that up to you because, of course, animations vary from person to person. But the logic behind it, I can definitely help you with. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a variable into our scene. So we're going to go logic and processing, get ourselves a variable. And this variable will be called armor. You can name it as specifically as you desire. Then in our timeline, which is our little animation timeline, as we remember, in the position where our earth armor was before, we're going to add a variable modifier. And this variable modifier is going to affect which variable. We'll press down on the D-pad so it affects armor, and it's going to add 1. There we are. So now we're going to make it so that when it gets to a certain point, it's actually going to add 1. Ooh. So now we take our little keyframe that we had before, we take it out of the timeline, and we put it just in our Puppet logic. We can put it in like a particular folder as we desire. That's all cool. But we're going to go armor, and we're going to connect it to the variable. And now it's only going to work when the armor value is equal to 1, in other words, true. So I'm going to delete the connection here just so it plays. Cha-ching! So a lot happened there, but essentially what happens is if we just look at this variable over here and this variable over here, we're going to see, okay, we play our timeline. Cha-ching! This guy works. What did he do? Aha, he added 1 to the armor. And now when armor equals 1, in other words, there's a positive value. Think of 0 as like a non-value and 1 as like a positive value, or true. 0 and 1, false and true. Then it's going to make it so that our armor is activated. But not only that, friends, that's looking cool, but I mean, what's the difference between what we were doing before? Well, now we have a little bit more in terms of options available to us, and we're able to make it last for, rather than permanently, just a short time. So we're going to go into our earth armor, we're going to turn off keep changes. Then we're going to go into logic and processing again and get ourselves a timer. Connect it to the current value so that when armor equals 1 or true, it's going to start the timer. Then when the timer is finished, we're going to add in another variable modifier that is going to activate this variable modifier. And what will this variable modifier be? It will be what variable in particular? The armor variable. And it's going to add -1. Or what you could do is set to 0. In other words, set to false. Similarly with this guy, you don't necessarily have to add 1. You can also just say set to 1. You can go with either or in this situation. So let's give it a try. It goes. It's 1. The timer is going. It's going. It's going. Cha-cha. And then the timer activates. And what happens? It sets armor to 0, and we no longer have our armor on. And if you want to increase the length of that, all you have to do is increase the time on the timer. You can make it last for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, however long. Really as long as you like. Let's connect it back to the old R2 button. So let's go into the controller, R2, connect it there, and let's give it a try. It'll last 10 seconds now. Yeah! We have our cool armor. 3, 4, 5, 6. I can still see my neck a little bit. It's still a little bit blue, but shing, and then our armor turns off. And yeah, friends, when it comes to the visual effects and that sort of a thing, I'll leave that up to you. I feel like this, showing you the logic of this, is the gist of it and the most important part. Everything else is essentially just the bells and whistles that you desire, and you know, whatever you want your game to look like in particular. But yes, friends, so that's how you get Earth armor, and not only just Earth armor, but Earth armor that only lasts for a certain period of time. Thank you so much, friends. Whoop whoop. Hey friends, I just want to show you something pretty cool when you have your rock armor. So I've put in a little bit of a microchip here, but it's all still the same stuff. And yes, friends, I want to show you how to make it so that when you put on your rock armor, that it makes your character move slightly differently. So we're going to have our poses turned on, and if we go into our poses, we're going to see that we have sort of 2 keyframes, and these keyframes correlate to 2 things in particular. First one is our idle pose, so that's just when we're not doing anything, there's no sort of input. And then the run pose, which is when we're running, the kind of pose we go into. So these are the default ones, and those are cool. And what we're going to do is to make some different poses when we go into our rock stage. So when we're sort of covered in our rock armor, we want to have a different look about us, you know what I mean? So what we're going to do is we're going to go into gadgets, logic and processing, and we're going to get a node. Put that down, R1 in square, create port, no port. And then you can make a copy of this. So now we want to make our idle pose different. So normally we're just going to be standing like this. And so what we're going to do is we're going to go, we can move our run pose over a little bit so it's just out of the way. What we're going to do is we're going to go over to our idle pose. We're going to delete the connection here, L1 in square, go to outputs, and it's page 1. We've got idle strength, and we're going to connect idle strength to this node. Then what we're going to do is we're going to have this node over here. We'll connect it like this. So now we've got 2 nodes. And this node will be connected to this guy, idle pose. So now, by default, the idle pose is going to be working. But now we want to make a new kind of pose. So I'm just going to move run pose all the way over here. So to make a new pose, I'm going to go idle pose. I'm going to copy that keyframe. I want an X, and I'm going to slightly change it around. So it looks like they've got like a slightly heavier sort of posture. I'm going to put on, while I'm sort of editing the puppet, I'm going to just start messing around and, you know, give them a bit of a lower stance, widen their legs out a bit, have some fun. You can turn on the puppet mirror if you want things to be sort of symmetrical. It's all up to you, of course. I want to be like, wow, their arms are sort of sticking out and they're a little bit more caveman-y. So that'll be their idle pose when they are in their rock form. So you can say idle pose armor, or whatever you fancy. Okay, sweet friends, so now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this node, connect it here, and then connect it to our idle pose armor. But by default, we're going to have it that this is turned off. Now we have our earth armor over here, which, as we remember, it gives us our cool funky sort of colors and turns on our helmet and that. What this is going to do is it's going to turn off this node and turn on this node. So what it does is, normally we're just going to be standing as normal, but when this happens, it's going to turn on our cool different stance. So now we're just chilling. And now, as you can see, I've got a bit more of a low stance, you know, he looks a bit different. But the run pose is still the same. And that's fine, but if we want to make it look like he's, you know, he's like moving a bit more sluggishly, we'll do the exact same thing. So we'll go node. We'll copy this one. We'll connect it to running strength. We'll delete this connection. We'll make another node, and we can copy this one because it's going to work. The keyframe will turn off this one and turn on that one, so we can copy that one and we can copy this one because it'll work in the exact same fashion. We'll connect this to the normal run pose, and then we'll make ourselves a new run pose. Let me just space this out a bit so it's not too confusing. Then we'll copy this one, and now we're going to make our, once again, we can make it look like super dumb, which is always a lot of fun. Make it sort of like their legs just go out like really wide, and their arms like, maybe their like head goes down as well. This is going to look really dumb. I love it. Okay, sweet. And of course, when we turn on Earth Armor, it's going to deactivate this one and activate the second one. You can, you know, go from the top and, you know, deanimate these and reanimate them as before. Or you can just copy these ones, because the sort of animation that it undergoes is copied as well. So let's give it a look. So here's our normal form. We're running around. We're standing. We're having a time. But if we transform, now we've got a lower gait, as it were, a lower stance. And then when we run... Okay. I'm taking this seriously. But now when we run, we look very cool, and we can do all of our moves. We can have a time. And yes, there you go. Oh, I see there's a little bit of a gap in the helmet there. That's fine. We can fix that too. So here we are, friends. You now know how to give your character rock armor, do all these various abilities, and change their pose. It looks like there's a lot of stuff going on, but it's basically just so that we know what's cracking. Alrighty, friends. I think that is pretty much the gist of what we're going to look at today, friends. So thank you so much for sticking around. If you have any questions, do let me know in the old comments below. I appreciate all the engagement. And yes, friends, I hope you enjoyed this one. It's a new sort of thing, a bit of a rock collection, quite a long video, but I hope it wasn't too intense. I hope it was segmented quite nicely and was a little bit more accessible. Then... yeah, or just that it is accessible. Okay, sweet friend. Thank you for sticking around. Thank you for checking this out. And I will catch you on the flip-flop. Peace out. Hey, thanks for watching, friends. I just want to give a massive shout out to my Patreon patrons, or as I like to call them, the Mean Knights. Thank you so much, Tap Giles. Ooh, thanks so much, Tap Sensei. Whoop, whoop, whoop. And Salt Levels Max, my first patron. Aw, ye. Friends, if you want to support your boy and get access to some bonus content, consider becoming a patron. Thanks for watching, friends. Peace out.